Hey YouTube, I have a 1986 Foxbody Mustang. I'm going to be putting a new radiator, new fans in, and along with that I'm going to be putting a new water pump in, a new thermostat housing, new thermostat, new rad hoses, new overflow. I have a new mounting bracket here for the radiator as well. Got some mounting pads for the radiator, new hose clamps, got a couple new bolts here as well for the water pump, and I'm probably going to paint this up before I put it on. The reason for all the changes is my water pump right now is starting to go, so I figured replace this, and if I'm going to do that I might as well just upgrade the whole cooling system on this right now. That would make way for the engine mods for a couple years from now, so I don't have to worry about any overheating issues. So I'm going to start here by removing the old fan I have in here, this old electric fan. I'm going to loosen off, remove the old fan belts in here, and then slowly, first thing I guess I'm going to have to do is drain the radiator and remove the rad, probably giving me a little more room to get at the water pump, and just to work at this one thing at a time. So I'll be taking this all apart, removing all the old stuff, and piece by piece we'll go through how I'm going to be installing all this. Hope you enjoy the video. Alright, so the job got a little bigger than I thought it would be. Typically these vehicles would have a serpentine belt from the factory, but because this is a Frankenstein car, the last guy put, I got a separate fan belt for the alternator and a separate one for the power steering. To remove the pulley to get at the bolts for the water pump, I also had to remove the bottom pulley on the bottom down here because it is sitting in front of it and I couldn't get this past it. So I had to take a little more off than I wanted to, but I guess on the plus side of it, now that I got this off, I kind of clean it up and paint it up as well, so when I put it back together it looked a little cleaner. Just as a little nitbit there, a little nugget to help you out as well. If your hoses are stuck on there, you may find that if you just put an adjustable clamp, gently just turn it a little bit, that'd be enough to loosen it up, so you can get these hoses loose and get them off. So anyways, the project's going pretty good. Made a little mess on the floor in the garage, but kind of expected that. So yeah, here we go, continuing on. Alright, so getting ready to put the new thermostat housing onto the car. You notice I painted it, and I was careful not to put any paint on the inside here. You don't want the paint peeling off inside and getting stuck in your cooling system. That'll clog up that part of your rad. You don't want that. So if you're going to paint your parts, just make sure you tape off the end or put some rags or something in there just so you don't get no paint in there. And I just want a good connection with the rad hose, so I didn't want any paint in that part either. You'll notice as well, so the old thermostat housing actually had a temperature sensor on it. I decided not to put mine in it because mine is actually on a manual switch, so I won't be needing that. So put that in there. There's a filler. When I put the filler in, I used some thread sealant, and I'm going to use that on the water pump as well when I put the parts in here that go to the heater core. So I'm going to be using thread sealant on that as well. So this is ready to go now, and I'm going to be putting, so there's a new thermostat as well. So just so you see here, so the thermostat, the crown part goes towards the rad. So in this case here, it actually will be installed in this way here. Before I put that in, I'm going to put a slight bead of gasket sealant in there, and then I'll put some sealant on there. I'm going to put the gasket on after that, put a little more sealant on that. Again, don't forget to put your thermostat in there before you put the gasket on there. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to put that on the vehicle. I'm going to put it finger tight until I get a little bit of the gasket sealant come out. I'm going to let it sit for an hour, and then I'm going to torque it to specs. So anyways, oh, and on top of that, so the new thermostat housing, had to get that because the old one just wasn't quite right angle for the hoses I have. With the new thermostat housing, I noticed that on the one side it's a little deeper, so I had to go get a longer bolt. So I just went to the local hardware store, got the bolts I needed, painted it black to make it look nice and new, kind of fit the scheme of everything I got going on underneath the hood. So I'm going to get that sealed up and put that on the car, and back at you shortly. Okay, so I've got the thermostat housing installed. Got it snug right now, but not torqued yet. That went on pretty good. I'm going to get ready to put the water pump on now. Just items. So the Fords, there's a brass plate at the back here, and there's a gasket inside here as well. So I've been looking everywhere trying to figure out, do I put gasket seal in there, yes or no? Well, I'm going to put some gasket sealant all the way around inside here on both sides, and then I'm going to put this onto the water pump, and then I got another gasket that goes on the water pump anyways as well. So I'm going to put some gasket sealant around this as well and get that on the car and see how it goes. So the water pump is now installed, and what I've done is I just worked my way across and over, just snugged it up for now until you get a little bit of the sealer to come through. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let that sit for an hour. After an hour I'm going to torque these up, and then I'm going to let it sit for a day. And I guess the next part is I'm going to have to put the rad in this, and I got to go out and buy a couple new heater core hoses. Might as well put some new hoses in here while I'm at it as well. I'm supposed to use the old ones. And oh, just a quick item here, if you got a new water pump and you're putting these, you have the option of just plugging the holes if you don't use a heater core. But if you do use a heater core, the ends of these are actually, you can put a Torax in there. So before you get ready, you may want to get it, make sure you have the right Torax driver in there so you can install that in. And I got the red thread seal in there, so that is good to go. And again, I painted the water pump, and I just made sure that I didn't get any paint inside of any of the areas here, so I masked off and around where the hose goes, and where these heater cores go. Actually, I have put some rags inside there so there's no paint gets inside there. And yeah, so anyways, we'll let that dry for a little while, and then I'm going to torque those up, and then the next phase I have to start getting ready to put the new radiator in. But before I do that, what I'm probably going to do is, so got the old fans come out and I got the new fans that are going in. I'm going to have to go get myself an electrical connector, join these two together, and then get a connector in the car so I can have a way of plugging these in. So the loading on these, by the way, is 180 watts, so 360 watts for the two of them. So you're talking, when these things are operating, you've got about 30 amps of load on here. So just in case you're wondering. So anyways, here we go, continuing on. Okay, so ran into a problem, went to put the pulley back on the new water pump. Turns out the holes on the new water pump are just a little further out than the original ones. Well, how about that? Great. Anyways, so I had to take these, notice what I did is put bolts in here just to hold the little cover plate, or the little plate in front, in with the pulley, so that way I could drill through both of these at the same time. Went to work and drilled these out in the drill press. Oversized them just a little bit because there's no way in the world I'm going to get these perfectly lined up. What I did to get to this point, I got a cereal box and I carefully cut it out according to the size of the front plate here. And then on the, what I did is, after I got the outside diameter and got the center part done, I put it on here. I got a sharp drill and I just, by hand, I found where the bolt holes were and just drilled it out by hand, just kind of enough to get a hole in here. I put the bolts in here afterwards, and then just brought the cardboard out a little bit, played with it in and out, and then I just cut these where the bolts go through. I cut those as clean as I could to get some pretty well round holes, and I used this as a template on the old one. So you can see there, that's where the old ones are, but these are a little further out, so I can move these like 45 degrees. Put this on here. I got a Sharpie marker, markered those, and drilled these out. So I'm hoping that this fits okay, but I have a funny feeling I may need to file that out a little bit to get it to go on. And what I'm going to do now, being I drilled these in this position here, I'm going to put a little mark in behind. That way I make sure I put this plate here onto the pulley in the right spot, so I'm not kind of compounding my issues if I need to kind of make only one of these holes a little bigger. Not a big deal that these are oversized, because what happens is the shaft is sitting on here pretty well flush. It's kind of essentially very similar to a car when you're talking about the center bore that sits onto the rim. Being that snug, all these bolts really do is just keep it locked in. So there's not a big deal if you're a little oversized, you're just off a little bit on these holes. As long as they're snug and they're tight, they'll be centered because of the center bore on this, and thankfully that's the same size. So anyways, I'm going to put this into the car, take these out and put it on, and I'm trying to cross my fingers hoping that it goes. Sorry, and before I forget, just so you know, so these bolts are in here, nuts. There's actually bolts in the back side here. That's what holds everything in place, because these things are not threaded. So anyways, just kind of filling in there in case you're wondering if these are threaded or not. Hopefully that helps in case you need it. Okay, so I went to put the pulleys on, and I got this all drilled out. That works. It actually got it fitting on there now. However, when I go and put the camshaft pulley on, it actually hits with the pulley from the water pump. So looking at this closer now, real subtle, not really obvious. The pulley location on the high performance water pump is about 1 inch lower than the one that I took off. So because of that, the pulley from the water pump and the camshaft are actually now touching, so this water pump will not work with the configuration I have. So I gotta go get myself a new water pump, one that's an exact fit. So when you get a 302 Ford, that's great, the water pump fits on the car, but the pulley location is not the same than the one that came off. So now I got problems. It's just not going to fit in there. So I'm going to have to go back and get myself another water pump and just get a standard water pump. Kind of frustrating after kind of hoping upgrading all of this. So anyways, Frankenstein cars, there you go. You want to try to make things a little better, and you just end up making things worse by having other issues. So back to the drawing board. Alright, real quick. So this is the new water pump I bought. This is the one I took off. So this is a 1986 Mustang and Frankenstein car. So, but I've got pulleys on this and individual fan belts, not the serpentine belt. The water pump that came off, if you look at it here, you can see a very slight angle from where the heater core hoses are, and then where it goes to the rad, there's a slight angle there. The new one, if you look at it, goes straight in and straight out. Both of these water pumps are rated for the same car. It just depends on your configuration. I actually found a new water pump to replace this one here. I'll give you the link on the for the web page afterwards on my notes on this. But anyways, so just real quick, if you're going to replace a water pump on your 302, there's a very good chance you're going to end up with this one here. Take a look at the pictures of it. That's straight in, straight out. If that's what you have, that's great. But there's a slight variation of it. And I was going through the website, and I was going through the pictures of all the water pumps, and I stumbled into one left in inventory that had the slight kink in it. The shaft on this is just a little bit higher than this one here, and that's why my pulleys are touching here, so this won't work on my car. So I got a replacement. I just got to paint it up, got it drying right now, but I'm going to put it in the car. It'll be fine. At least I'm hoping so. They'll give me the clearances I need. So again, one of the things I ran into with the Ford 302. Hopefully that helps you guys, maybe keep you out of a pickle that I just got into. So I've got my second new water pump installed now, and I've got the hoses for put the hoses on here. You may want to consider the location of your clamps, so that if you ever need to access these after the fact, you can get at them. Don't bury them. And you may want to put the heater hose on here on the water pump before you put the alternator on. So this is a 5/8 hose. The top one here is actually 3/4, but the 5/8 hose is really hard to get onto the water pump. So you really have to take your time and work that on there. And then when you put your clamp on there, make sure you leave it so that's accessible. Otherwise, you're kind of euchred if you'd ever need to get access that afterwards. So again, put this on first, and then I'm going to put the alternator in. A lot easier doing it in that order. And so I'm going to replace my two heater core hoses and put all the hardware back on, and then after that I guess I can start working on the rad. Okay, so I got all the pulleys installed, got the fan belts tightened up, and I'm ready to put the new radiator in. And what I'm going to start with now is the electrical, get the new fan wired up. So I'm going to have to cut this old connector off here because it's not compatible with the ones that came with the fans I got. So what I did here is I just cut the new connectors off and stripped over the end of the wire, touched the batteries, make sure that they were going the proper direction. Essentially, when the fans are installed, they should be blowing towards you. Well, anyways, when I did that, the one fan side is good, it's turning freely. However, the other side just sparks and nothing happens. The fan on this side here is totally seized. So I'm going to take this apart here, see if there's something maybe not easy, something easy for me to fix. If it is, great. If not, I'm going to have to get myself another replacement of this. And here we go. The problems keep going on and piling up. Eventually we'll get there, but well, we'll see what we got to do with this now. All right, So I took the fan apart and kind of worked it, and it's actually rotating now. So the thing was seized before, but it's fine now. They're both rotating the same. So what I did also is I turned these two fans around because they actually have a couple of little mounting brackets on it. Because my connector's actually on top. Drilled a hole here and tapped it and put a tie wrap on it, one of those holy ties, just so this thing doesn't flop around too much. And I got my new connector on here. So that's ready to go in the vehicle now, and I think we're on the home stretch here, and I got my connector soldered and all taped up inside here. So, oh, and I put a couple new mounting pads on the bottom of the radiator as well. Figure if you're gonna take it apart, we'll put some new stuff in there too. So we'll get that new radiator in there and hook up the hoses, and that's the next step. All right, so it is all done. Got the new bracket for the radiator in place. Had to file the holes a little bit because it didn't line up properly to make that fit. The rad's in place, all the hoses are in here, and I put the new overflow that I have, and the only problem is there's not a lot of room to put it, and so I had to get creative and fabricate my own bracket for it. So I just grabbed a piece of little angle metal, and what I did is I cut it in place and bent it to make myself a bracket for it. So you can see here on the bottom here, what I did is I used a self-tapping screw, put that in, and I got the two bolts on here that came with the kit for the overflow, and then I used the original screw over here that used to hold the overflow. So anyways, I heard some complaints that these are kind of small, only holds about maybe liter if you're lucky. Anyways, mine doesn't have any issues with needing to be topped up very often at all, so should be fine for mine. So I still need to top up with the new fluids in, and then I'm ready to go. So a couple things to watch for again. Don't forget your water pump. There's a couple slight modification, different variations of ones out there. If you have the one with a slight kink in it, if you have pulleys like mine is, as opposed to the serpentine belt, make sure you get the one with the kink. You can get that at Rock Auto. Check for the 1985 Mustang ones and just go through the pictures and you'll see it that way. Just another point here, so I got the 3/4 hose in here, and you notice there's a little bit of a kink on here just because of the tight bend in here with the alternator. I'm kind of hoping when the pressure builds up in here that'll kind of blow itself out without blowing out. Yeah, so anyways, and with the hoses that come with the SVE kit, you need a thermostat housing that's going to come up. Mine came straight out before, so this is a little different variation setup from what I had before. Looks a lot cleaner though now, and I painted the pulleys and got that cleaned up a little bit, cleaned the brackets and painted those as well, and well, we're getting there. A lot better than it was, and still got some work to do. Next thing I gotta do is gotta clean up some of the electrical wiring that's just kind of sitting in here, so that'll be my next little project somewhere along the way. Anyways, hopefully you guys found the video helpful, and happy motoring. Alright, so I went to put fluid into the radiator, ran into another problem with the bracket here. The rad sits too close to the front of the vehicle and I can't get the cap off on the radiator. So I got creative, found some fuel line hose kicking around here, and what I did is I just tie wrapped it into the front, just in behind the lip here. So now when I put the bracket on, that will give you a little bit of a spacer in the front, and just enough so that I can get the rad cap on and off without any issues. And that should be the final, hopefully, modification I got to do before I put the rad fluid in here and get her fired up. So anyways, as always, it's never easy. There's always some little minor tweaking you got to do. So again, hopefully this helps you guys.